We're doing a big book haul today, and believe it or not, this is actually me showing some restraint. Hi, I'm Niki, the Obsessive Bookseller. Welcome to my channel. I have been known to do a lot of really big book hauls on this channel. I love the curation part of owning books and collecting. It's so much fun. But if you caught my goal-setting Read, Burn, Hoard and my massive reorganization video lately, my priorities are shifting. I am more and more trying to fixate on reading the books that I have and really enjoying them, and making the book buying an actual curation where I'm only bringing in the best titles. Because, I've been saying it for a while. I've been going hog wild, bringing home anything that sounds even remotely interesting. And so I'm very consciously starting to shift my buying habits, and you're not going to be able to tell by this particular haul, but trust me, there's this huge mindset shift that I've been going through, and it's already starting to have some effects. But first and foremost, the most exciting thing I've added to my collection is a massive set of Pratchett books, specifically Discworld. I have been hunting for years and years for a set that I actually liked. I had original hardcovers at one point. I had those really brightly colored little mass market paperbacks. Nothing has been good enough. And it's one of the reasons why I haven't started the series. And having read Going Postal last year, one of the most unexpectedly delightful things I've read in a long time, I was beyond thrilled to actually find a set of these books that I loved. And I love these things. Now here's what I did. I picked up a cleaning gig, a completely random side hustle on top of the already 2 side hustles I'm doing in tandem with a full-time job and as a mom of 3. And I decided every time I got paid, that money was going straight towards my Pratchett fund. Every month I picked up about 5 or so of these books. And I gotta tell you, when you're doing kind of a crappy job with the mindset that every hour of hard work gets you a couple books closer to completing a collection, incredibly motivating. So I essentially saved up for these for months, and I can't wait. I'm in the middle of our Incomplete Series Challenge, and I am not starting anything new right now, but you betcha 2025 is going to be the year of Pratchett if I have my way. So cool! And if I like them as much as I think I will, it's going to be one of my favorite things I've got on my shelves. I bought R.J. Barker's Gods of the Weird Wood. I haven't read anything by this author before. I got the really nice broken binding editions of Tide Child, and so I thought, well, if I like the author, I'm going to want a lot of them in hardcover. This is the only one that I think is kind of iffy when it comes to spending money on books this month. I found it super cheap on Pango. It was one of the last impulse buys that I made, and it's one that I'm reasonably sure I'm going to like, but it is a little bit of a gamble. Having read and loved Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey, first book in the Captives' War, I found a signed copy and snagged it. These are my favorite sci-fi writers, and I was already planning on collecting it in hardcover, so why not use some of the money I've been saving by not buying every book under the sun and invest it in getting an actually nice quality edition. So very excited to have this one. I got the Inkstone edition of Dollmakers by Lynn Buchanan, one of Brandon Sanderson's proteges, and she had a really cool article about treating writing as a job before she was able to become a full-time writer. So I think it's rad, and the sprayed edges on this thing are so cool. This is a neat addition. However, look at how tiny it is compared to your standard hardcover. This is one of the smallest ones I've ever seen, and when it came in the box, I was like, oh, how quaint. I kind of prefer big, robust hardcovers. This is going to look a little bit odd on my shelves, but we're going to go with it, and I really appreciate how creative the subject matter of the book is, so I think I'm going to like it. But yes, also a signed edition. I found a very reasonably priced copy of City of Songs by Anthony Ryan, one of my all-time favorite authors. This is book 3 in the Seven Swords series. I've read up to this point. I need to do a reread of the entire thing, and this was, aside from the first book, the only one I didn't have in hardcover, and I found it for like 10 bucks. So definitely a good investment for me. This author is not my very top author, but he's definitely in the top 5. I just got this in the mail from the awesome publicists at Tor. Monstrous Nights by Genoveva Demova. This is book 2 in the Witch's Compendium of Monsters. It's a duology, so this caps out the series, and I absolutely loved Foul Days by this author. I read it earlier in the year. one of the highlights of the year so far for sure. I've had this on my TBR for a couple of months now and even read a few chapters from it, just as good as the first one so far. But I'm so scattered with my reading that I haven't had a chance to make time to get back to it. But as it just got published about a week ago, cannot wait to pick this one up. I'm so excited that I have a copy for my shelves. Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. This is the writer of Race the Sands, which is a standalone book that I loved the snot out of that thing. It was such a good book, so much fun. So many elements that me as a reader, I love. And if I were ever to become a writer, the type of stories that I would want to write is what she's already doing. And this is supposed to be like a romance, fantasy type of thing. And I like a good romance. I don't think I've read anything from her that indicates that she would be a particularly good romance writer. For that reason, I'm hoping it'll be a little heavier on the fantasy elements with just a good romance built in. But either way, I think I'm game for it. I bought Assistant to the Villain and Apprentice to the Villain. I really don't know much about these other than my bestie Charlotte recommended them to me. It's a kind of fun read. I've been really enjoying kind of cheeky fantasy books lately, hence the Pratchett. And my new strategy for buying books is, if I were willing to read it immediately, I can bring it home. And I've been itching to throw my challenge out the window and pick up this series because I think it would be a lot of fun. And I really love stories where there's an apprentice vibe where you can learn magic alongside the character or whatever the cool non-existing in our world thing might be. Got this beautiful edition of Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons. It's an Inkstone Press edition. Like, look at those sprayed edges. Oh my gosh. Now, I read Ruin of Kings by this author this year. One of the best signatures ever. And decided that this author works for me on all levels. I really love her stuff. And there is a dragon or two in Ruin of Kings, which is why I think this book and I will get along splendidly. I really like her approach to dragons. They're very badass. And with such a cool edition, I can't wait to give this one a go. In the same vein as Assistant to the Villain, in my mind anyway, since I haven't read them, also recommended by my friend Charlotte, Dreadful by Caitlin Rozakis. This is an Aardvark Book Club edition, which I found this on Pango. I had no idea Aardvark Book Club even existed, but I think that's the only way to get it in hardcover at the moment. This is one my bestie also recommended, and her, 1-minute elevator pitch sold me on the whole thing. I'm really excited for this one. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe it had to do a little bit with Legends and Lattes, where publishers suddenly realized, fantasy doesn't have to be so dang serious. We could actually publish a few fun things and people will read them. It's like the cozy movement. I'm all for that. My Broken Binding subscription of Jade War and Jade Legacy came in, and the stained glass on the sprayed edges is absolutely gorgeous. So pretty. And I have read this series. I loved it pretty much as everybody else, especially the last book. And I can honestly say that that's one of the few that's worth the hype. I could have used a little more fantasy elements to it, but the longer I've been away from it, the more I appreciate how exceptionally it was written. So I am really grateful to have these nice editions on my shelves, but I also have the original hardcovers, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with those yet. I'm not sure which cover. Those ones are kind of basic, but I like that about them. But they're so different from these, I don't know which ones to keep. And to that end, I got the Broken Binding Dandelion Dynasty books. These are the midnight editions. There's a scene on the sprayed edges. It's really cool. I preferred the regular Broken Binding editions, like the color schemes on those, better than the editions. I think purple's my least favorite color. But just about ready to pick up Speaking Bones, the final book in the series, with my patrons. And yeah, it's really, really good. One of the most creatively done, in-depth, most intelligent stories, very unconventional, dances to its own beat, and yet one of the most memorable things I've ever read. So really glad to have beautiful editions of a series that so far I am loving. And then this month's subscription, Dragonbone Chair, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Tad Williams. I've read this first book. It was more classic fantasy than I think I really wanted to read. That for those of you who Lord of the Rings is your favorite, read this series. I can't imagine you have, like, if that is the case, you haven't read this one already, but if there's a chance, this is very similar, only I feel like in some ways this was written in a more accessible way. And it's one of those books where the pleasure of it is in the journey itself. I lost a little patience with being along with the journey because I wasn't ready to just sit back. It's one of those curl up next to the fire and let me tell you with this grand tale type of books. And I crave a little more dynamics. And then that was for like 2/3 of the book. And suddenly it got really complex. And suddenly there was a bunch of characters to remember. And by the time I realized that the book was moving so far ahead of my attention span, I was just confused. It was just way too much all at once, and I wasn't ready for that, given the fact that the first 2/3 of the book kind of dragged. In an interesting way. It dragged for me because it's not really my favorite genre. Rambling aside, because I love these editions from the Broken Binding, I think they are absolutely stunning. If I'm going to drop that kind of money on books, I'm going to prioritize them, and I'm going to try to reread the series, start from the beginning, and actually work my way through them as they come out from the Broken Binding. If I can read it by the end of next year, I'll be happy. And it wasn't a bad book. Like, I did not leave the book feeling like, oh, I wish I hadn't read that. I left the book feeling like, I wish I had been in the right mindset for that. But now is my chance. Continuing my Broken Binding collecting of the hardcovers for the Shadow of the App series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is the most recent one that I read, and it reinvigorated my love of the series so far. Very much enjoying this one. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know how much I've geeked out about it, so I will spare you. But now I need to continue reading because I want to have read all of these books before they arrive from the Broken Binding. They release about one a quarter. But I am very pleased that one of my favorites is available in hardcover. The Broken Binding has done such cool stuff for my collector soul. I've seen a lot of interviews with the owner of Broken Binding, and very much a book person's person. His intent is to help people get a hold of beautiful hardcover books of series that it's almost impossible to find hardcover editions of unless you're willing to spend several $100s. Making all these amazing titles accessible where they previously had not been, I'm loving it. My pocketbook is hating it, but I'm loving it. But if I'm going to spend that much money on it, because I also have a sci-fi subscription, I am committed to actually reading the books that I'm willing to spend that much money on to bring home. This is The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, and one of the most beautiful covers. I love this. I am in such awe. I think it is so gorgeous. I love ombre effects and anything with like bright colors anyway. And this is one I had my eye on. I have read a few things by Cixin Liu. A couple of short stories. The Wandering Earth one is especially good. And this author is so wild. Like, I feel like if we were ever facing global doom, this is the person we need to call for idea generation, like how to survive. This is one of his most acclaimed works, and I'm gonna have to be in the right mindset for this one because this author is dense, but I think it'll be worth it. And last but not least, Tide of Black Steel by Anthony Ryan. Like I said, one of my all-time favorite authors, and I got a Goldsboro signed edition. This is book 1 in the Age of Wrath. It's the latest thing he's working on. I have gotten behind in his works, but the fact that this one was being published, and it's just such an interesting, like, this has my name written all over it. I am so excited for this one. Might actually get me to prioritize going back to his works sooner than I was planning. There's the haul of about the 20 or so books that I have here, not counting the Pratchetts. Half of them I've read already and have determined that they're high enough priority to bring into the house. They had a good enough rating. Of the remaining 10, about half of those were subscription boxes that I was kind of already committed to purchasing. So really, I've only brought in 5 additional titles that were me going out and actually seeking what to bring home. And at that rate, honestly, I could probably sustain that without making my current backstock problem even worse. Because I've had a lot of book haul videos lately, but really I film them about once a quarter. There were just a lot of them backed up because I had special circumstances and events that put a video in and displaced the other one. Long story. But my intent is every book that I value enough to bring home needs to be read reasonably soon. And I have a section where I've got books in progress, like series that I've started, and I've decided that instead of adding these new books that I'm bringing home to my backlist, my massively nicely reorganized backlist, I'm going to be putting these titles in with my currently reading stuff, with the intention of picking them up sooner than later. I think it'll be a good system. You can hold me to it though. Next haul video that I do, I want your feedback on whether or not you think I am showing restraint in my book buying. If you had any idea the number of books that I almost bought this quarter and didn't, you'd be proud of me. I'm proud of me. Like, there's a bunch of impulse buys and things that I could buy that I didn't because I keep asking myself the question, if this got picked for my challenge overhauled, would I be excited to pick it up immediately? Would it be like a hell yes answer? And all of these I feel like are a yes, except for Gods of the Wormwood. So that's my one whoopsie this time, but it's beautiful. Maybe I'll like it better than I think I will. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this one. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you next time. Bye.